All of these are streamed live to YouTube so that anyone from the public is able to tune in and observe. The last thing I need to do is just run through our hearing script, and it'll just cover basically the procedure for the hearing, and then we'll get started. All right. So this is the May 4th, 2022 session of the Zoning Hearing Examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. I'm the Zoning Hearing Examiner for the City of Cincinnati, and I'll preside over this hearing. Case before us today is case number ZH20220057. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the Zoning Hearing Examiner. All testimony or and evidence that an applicant or any opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing, unless a party has submitted evidence or testimony in the form of writing prior to this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. If there were anyone here from the public, they would have an opportunity to speak after the applicant has presented its case. Excuse me. If the zoning plans examiner joins us, Trey Sheldon, I'll give him an opportunity to provide any testimony in addition to his staff report. In the event that any party testifies in opposition to this application, the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut that testimony and or argument offered in opposition. And then finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make any closing statements. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. So it looks like everyone here is a part of this project or is here in support of this project. Well, I'm sorry, I am not 100% sure about that. But what I'll do here is give everyone on the owner applicant team here that is a part of this project an opportunity to present. And in fact, I can hear from one of you or all of you. It's really, I leave that open to the applicants and the owners, how they want to present this and what information they want me to hear. I generally like to hear background, tell me everything about the project that you think is important for me to make my decision. And then of course, the reasons why you think this project is appropriate and I should grant the relief. So however you all want to orient that, whoever wants to take the lead, that's completely up to you. I'll then go, and I do have, I'm sorry, Mr. Durham. I'll give Mr. Durham an opportunity to provide any testimony on behalf of the Walnut Hills Community Council. And then I'll go back and give the applicant owners again a chance to respond to anything that they've heard during the hearing or any questions asked, and then make any closing statements. And then we'll close the hearing. And it looks like we have our zoning plans examiner joining us now. So, excuse me. Again, after all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or make any comments. I may also refuse to consider hearsay testimony or documents. That's generally evidence you want to introduce that consists of statements made by someone who's not present at this hearing. In the event of any technical difficulties or unforeseen circumstances with the video conferencing technology, I may continue or postpone this hearing. I'll do my best to troubleshoot any technical issues on the fly, but if there's some defect that prevents us from meaningfully going forward with this hearing today, I may continue or postpone it. Okay, let's see. Last thing I need to do is swear in all of our witnesses. So if you intend on providing any testimony here today, making any comments, asking any questions, doing anything other than just strictly observing, then you need to be sworn in. If you're not sure yet if you're going to provide any testimony, I can swear you in before your testimony. But if you know that you'd like to provide some information, some testimony here today, then you need to be sworn in. I'd like to do it now. So if that's you, if you could take yourself off mute. I need everyone to answer out loud and to raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I do.
Yes.
Great. Thank you all. And really quick before we get started, I have a Steve Mueller here. Mr. Mueller, are you with us?
Yes, again.
Yes.
Mr. Mueller, who are you representing here today?
I just own a home that's on DeSales Lane.
Great. Okay. Just going through some administrative things there. I will give you an opportunity to provide testimony about the project. We're just about to hear from the applicant about what the project is and sort of the scope and all of those details. But I will give you an opportunity after they're done presenting to provide any testimony that you would like. I will say that if you would like to provide testimony, we do require that, or do ask that you turn your camera on during that testimony.
Okay. I sent a written note or message, I think, online. So that pretty much says what I want to say.
Okay, yeah, and if that's, if you'd like to just defer to that written statement, that's perfectly fine as well.
Wonderful.
Okay, great. In which case you don't need to activate your camera. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, Trey. Who's going to be taking the lead for us here on presenting the applicant's case?
David, I'll take the lead, but I'm going to first turn it over to Andy and Candace with the school to tell us a little bit of background on the story and kind of how this all started.
Sure, Andy, the floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you for your time. Our school's in its 94th year and has never had an opportunity for a home field. In the times that we live in, an opportunity came to purchase some land and create a multi-purpose athletic facility that ultimately allows practices to be on campus and games to be hosted on campus. The driving force behind this, plain and simple, is safety. We have kids jumping in cars, traveling to off-site practices. We have to scan public parks for glass and other paraphernalia, basically, that creates safety risks and hazards and so on. So at the end of the day, the ability for our fall field-based sports and our spring field-based sports to have a multi-purpose facility that is on campus, that is very well done, and ultimately safe for project evolved through very generous alone. It's been 90 years, of course, long enough. So let's go ahead and make this field of dreams, is what it was once referred to, happen. And our most storied alum, Roger Staubach, has stepped up to be one of the lead supporters of the project, and ultimately the person of whom the project will be named after. All things ago, our plan is to start later this spring and conclude the project by March of 23.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
In our journeys, we've communicated significantly with.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think my feed is being a little glitchy over here. I apologize. Please continue.
No worries. We have reached out to our neighbors, both through the community council and through several neighborhood events, to be open and transparent with what we're doing. I think we've reached some outstanding agreements with the East Walnut Hills Community Council, and we look forward to being good neighbors and providing some restored beauty to what otherwise is the darker side of campus currently.
Okay. Anything else, Andy or Candace?
We do not.
Okay, great. Thank you for that testimony. Ms. Hannon?
Yes, so I'm gonna, am I able to share screen? I kind of want to go through the project and give just a little background on what we intend to do here.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free.
Okay. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen. Currently I'm showing the survey base map. So this is what is out here today. So the current Purcell Marion High School sits here on the right side of the sheet. They currently have a small half-size field that they're able to use for practice, but is not big enough to hold games or events of that nature. This is the funeral home up here. That has been demoed, and then we've got Woodland Avenue over here into Sales Lane at the top of the sheet. The next sheet, this just kind of shows all the demolition that's occurring. So the existing field will be removed, existing parking lots down here near the church and the school will be removed, as well as the house that sits here in the church or in the old funeral home have already been demolished. This next plan sheet kind of gives an overall look of what the project will look like when it's done. There will be a sidewalk outside of the school at the back of the house. there will be a ramp then up to kind of the parking lot level. The field will be flat and will be at the kind of school level here. So there will be access onto the field from the school. And because of the elevation change that we have from the school out to DeSales Avenue, it will require a couple of walls to be built. Walls around the field will start approximately here, run across this side, up the back side of the field, and then continue along DeSales Avenue. And that allows the field to be a flat field within regulations of the National High School Athletic Association. It's standard there. At the corner, or the southeast corner, the southwest corner of the site is going to be a ticket booth in the main entrance to the stadium. There is a small building here, as well as the gates and the entrance, and then sidewalk along the west side of the stadium. And then there is an access to be able to get down to the street side as an emergency access at the northwest side of the facility. As an alternate, we are proposing bleachers, a bleacher and press box system, so that the school can host major games and events here at the stadium. It's 1,000-seat bleachers. With the bleachers, they will then have to expand the ticket booth building down here to include restrooms. So the school is in the process of getting a general contractor on board, so it has not been decided whether the bleachers, press box, and the restrooms will be a part of the project, but it would be a future phase if it's not done this year. We provided a parking map in the zoning submittal. This kind of shows the existing parking that is there, and that services the school, both schools and the church currently. And then this is the proposed parking map. So we do lose about 32 spaces with expanding the field to a full-size field. But this map kind of shows that there is still parking available, and they do have a short-term agreement with a lot over here that's within the 600-foot radius of the stadium. And then in green, it shows all of the kind of street parking that's around the facility. This is the grading plan, and it kind of shows what I was talking about earlier of the field is flat, and then we've got walls around the field here to ensure that we're able to have a flat field. And then we also have a wall starting at the ticket booth here in the southwest corner that starts at zero elevation. That's where the wall starts, and then it increases as you move towards DeSales Lane, and that is to ensure that we can have a flat bleacher system and a walkable ADA path to access those bleachers. There will also be, like I mentioned, there's a wall along DeSales on this side of the field. And then this is our landscape plan. So it does show some landscaping and buffering around the stadium as well, and closer to the school. This is just kind of a closer up look. Woodburn's over here. The St. Francis de Sales Church is down here, and the school's over here. So this is just some plantings and bufferings around the stadium to make it welcoming. These are just kind of overall plan sheets here that show the different alternates with adding the bleacher system and enlarging the ticket booth building. This is a close-up plan view of the building here. I can zoom in a little bit so you can see that this is where the ticketing and concession would happen. We've got janitor's closet, electrical room, mechanical room, and then these would be the restrooms that would need to be built out if the bleachers are done. These are some kind of perspective views, elevation views of what things will look like. This top one here is what it'll look like from DeSales Lane. So you'll see that there's kind of a wall that starts out here closer to Woodburn and then grows as you get further down to sales. And behind the uprights, the football uprights, we will have netting, and that's to help kind of ball control so that there aren't footballs going into the sales or hitting cars and things of that nature. This elevation down here is from the Woodburn perspective. So the ticket booth sits down here where the wall starts, and then the wall increases as you get closer to the sales. So there will be a wall, there's a chain link fence for a safety perspective and for a security perspective of the school. You also have the bleachers then here. This is the full 1,000-seat bleachers within the press box.
Kaylee, I need to interrupt real quick.
Yeah.
That will not be a chain link fence. That is I believe it's aluminum in the same look and feel as what we've had around the current field on the facing the street.
Yes.
So that
yes.
was a change.
That is correct. Yes. So this is a vinyl. It's not a chain link fence as it's shown here. Yes. Thank you, Andy. And then these down here perspective views of the building. This will be what the ticket booth building will look like as you enter the stadium from Woodburn. And then these are the two different views of what the building will look like along Woodburn. If it's just a ticket booth, this will be what it looks like with the signage. If the building is increased to add the restrooms, this is then how it'll look with the signage. The last elevation view we have here is the scoreboard. This is the back of the scoreboard that faces the parking lot that sits in between the stadium and St. Francis de Sales Church there. And then this is the signage that is being proposed for the back of the scoreboard. And something I didn't touch on in these plan views, the scoreboard will sit here, and then we will also have stadium lights, 4 lights that sit kind of at each corner of the field. So I think that gives a pretty good overview of what's included in the project without getting too much in the weeds, but I did want to go over that just so everyone's aware of what's included in the project. I want to then go through the variances that are needed to make sure everyone's aware of what we're asking for. So this is the adjudication letter that Trey put together for a part of this project for the variances that are being acquired for this project. So the first one is that we are proposing 5 new parking spaces along the side of the St. Francis de Sales Elementary School that sits there. And because of where those are located, we are needing a special exemption. So with this project, we're having to remove parking spaces to be able to fit a full-size field in the location that it is. So we're trying to add as many new parking spaces in potential areas that we can to be able to show good faith that we are trying to add as many parking spaces as possible. The second variance is that accessory structures are not permitted in a front or side yard. Because of the location of the stadium, it sits in a front and side yard because it is facing Woodburn and DeSales. There's kind of no other location for this field to go, so it will sit in a front and side yard. The third variance is that the minimum height of a fence or wall may not exceed 4 feet in the residential districts, and then cannot exceed 6 feet in the CCM district. So we have a wall that starts out at 0 feet and goes up to 11 feet, and that makes this project possible. It makes the bleachers and the spectator fan views possible, as well as keeping the flat field, which is standard for high school athletics. So without these walls, this project would not be possible. And then the 6 feet final decorative fence that is on top of the wall is for security and safety of the athletes while they're on the field. The fourth variance is that the maximum height of exterior light source is 20 feet above grade. Our proposed stadium lights are 70 feet tall, and this is standard with the industry of stadium lights for athletic fields. The fifth variance is that a buffer yard is required between the CCM district and the residential mixed use district. So the district lines actually run through the field. So it's not possible to be able to put a buffer yard through the athletic field. The sixth variance we have is that with having 1,000-seat bleachers, we are required to have, I apologize, I read this one wrong. So we are removing a total of 36 parking spaces with the construction of the stadium. And with that, we need a variance to be able to not replace those. And the school has acquired that short-term agreement with the Hamilton County Disabilities parking lot that they're able to use during events and after school hours. And like we showed on the parking map, there is a street parking to hopefully offset the number of parking spaces that are being lost. The seventh variance is that 200 parking spaces are required for the 1,000-seat bleacher. There is 229 parking spaces that is between both the schools and the church. And the three buildings do have an agreement between the three of them to not host events at the same time as churches going on, weddings are going on, or any school events. So those 229 parking spaces then can be shared between the three buildings. The next variance is about the frontage, the building along the ticket booth building that's along Woodburn and the signage that's along it. So we are not to exceed 1.5 square feet of building frontage, and we've got a proposed 16 square feet. So we're asking for a variance to be able to add the signage. We think that the side of the building should be branded with the school's logo and information, just so that people know that they've arrived and that this is where they should be heading into the stadium. The last variances that we need is for the signage on the back of the scoreboard. The back of the scoreboard is an opportunity to put the Staubach name and the school's logo. And we think that that's a better design than just a black scoreboard. It can be seen from Woodburn Avenue as you are walking into the stadium, but it cannot be seen from Madison Avenue. And that is kind of the overview of the project and the kind of the variances that we're asking for.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a couple quick initial questions.
David, it's Trey. Normally I summarize after this, but I wanted a clarification before it goes further with the thing. Two quick points. One, they are asking for the maximum possible, assuming that this project is able to do the full 1,000 square feet. And in other words, assuming that when they do their bids and get their funding and stuff finalized, that they're able to do the maximum. They may do a project that it's possible they may do a project that is reduced in that capacity. And that's part of what Ms. Hammond was speaking to. I hope that makes sense. So it will affect the number of restrooms required, et cetera. So, you know, it's possible that they end up with bleachers that only accommodate 500 people or something of that nature. And that would affect then the size of the support building that has the restrooms based upon building code. And it would also affect the required parking. So I thought that was an important point to make, because they've essentially asked for the maximum, assuming they're doing the full scope of the project, but it may end up finances and so on pending. They may end up doing less than that. I hope that makes sense.
It does. But to what extent do you think that that's something I should consider when they're asking for the maximum?
I just wanted to raise it as a point. You should consider this as the maximum. I'm trying to, but as explained, she showed a site plan that showed no bleachers at all, for example, initially. And so there are possible, there are alternative scenarios that originally I discussed with them. And obviously they should be asking for the maximum of what this might be, not the minimum. And then if it ends up being something substantially less, then so be it. But I just wanted to clarify that, because there's a different site plan that shows no bleachers and a much reduced support building for the ticketing. Does that make sense?
It does. Thanks, Trey.
Yep, you're welcome.
Ms. Hammond, if I could just nail down on a couple things. It's kind of a little convoluted how these parking requests are sort of split up into 3 different variances and a special exception, or 2 variances and a special exception. How many dedicated parking spaces will there be, not including any on-street parking? So including the leased property down the street and the parking that will be available and dedicated on the property.
I am going to share screen again just so that I think it's always helpful to have a visual. So this is the proposed parking map that we have. So everything in kind of this bluish purple is what the school owns and is on their property. And then this is the existing uses parking map. So this includes all of the parking that the school owns with the 5 added spaces along the school here. So this is the total that everything that they own. So they will have a total of 192.
Gotcha. And did you say that if this is built out to the maximum, or the full project as Trey is referencing, what's the capacity of the stadium?
The capacity is 1,000 seat bleachers.
Okay, gotcha. And how many nights per year are you anticipating that Purcell Marion will be hosting home games of some sort, of some sport, I should say?
I will turn that question over to Andy so I don't misspeak.
Yeah, as we spoke with the community council, we defined events in different categories. Varsity football on a Friday night being the only event that would have the potential of filling close to or up to capacity. And those are 5 regularly scheduled home games plus a preseason game plus maybe a couple playoff games along there. So I believe the number we had capped it, if I'm remembering correctly, is 15, but we don't see that we would need that 15 number. Beyond that, we agreed that essentially that there would be unlimited use, but no later than 10 o'clock, lights automatically off, no sound, and that would be for soccer practices, especially as the season turns and it gets darker outside. So the need to perhaps run the lights at 50% capacity to field a soccer practice. So the field will be used probably 6 days a week in some capacity, but relative to filling bleachers, only those varsity football games would fill in a meaningful way.
Gotcha. Okay.
David, I've provided a summary of the summary that was provided and basically following their agreement with the Walnut Hills, East Walnut Hills Assembly. That is appended to the end of my staff report. So you can see a summary of events. I'm just backing up what Andy just discussed. So it's actually, you can see that in writing at the very end of the staff report.
Sure. Thanks, Chair. Okay. Let me, I think that's all the initial questions I have. So is there anyone else, Ms. Hammond or Andy, on the applicant owner team here that you would like to provide some testimony before I turn it over to Mr. Durham?
Chris, Bob, Craig, anything to add?
Good on my end. Thanks, Kaylee.
No, yeah,
I think I'd like to make a comment.
I have nothing to add.
Mr. Mueller, I'll give you a chance in just 1 second, okay? But please be prepared to activate your camera. There we go. Thanks.
There we go.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Sheeran, was that a no on your end?
Yeah, I have nothing to add, David.
Mr. Durham, I'll go to you. Or Andy, did you have something?
I'd just like to say that this is most likely in our 94-year history, the single most transformative and positive impacting build that we will have on the school. Truly, it reaches everyone in some capacity, and relative to creating a safe environment. beyond the realm of being able to explain the dynamic of improvement there, the safety is increasing by manyfold along the way.
Thank you. Okay, I think we'll turn it over to the public now. Mr. Durham.
Thank you. Generally, we provided a letter in support of the project. The East Walnut Hills Assembly Board and its membership at a general meeting supported the project, subject to certain conditions set out in my letter. And Purcell Marion worked with us on those conditions. One of the most important was the retaining wall. We were concerned that it not be simply a bare concrete slab, and they've agreed that they will use form liners so that it has the appearance of a stone wall. Likewise, the fencing that was mentioned, we were concerned that the chain link would not fit in the neighborhood and the look that we would desire, and they agreed that it would be a fencing that would have the look of wrought iron, a traditional fence. They worked with us on scheduling. They worked with us on parking and traffic. In particular, they've agreed that they'll take reasonable efforts to direct parking away from the side streets and towards the lots and towards Woodburn Avenue, rather than the side streets. And limiting the number of large events in the facility. The soccer practices are not going to cause stress on traffic or parking. It's really only the large events that would do that. As I say, they've accommodated our requests, all of the requests that we as the neighborhood council suggested.
Okay, thank you. Question on that, in regards to the retaining wall changes and the fencing agreement, have those been updated in the actual plans that are submitted?
Correct. Yeah, David, the elevations that Kaylee was showing prior do have, you can see where it shows it going from high to low. It has that stone ashlar look, and that's the form liner that Freeman was referring to on both the west and north side of the site with the aluminum black iron fence on top.
Okay, got it. All right, and quick question for anyone on the applicant owner side. What exactly, Mr. Durham referenced efforts, you've agreed to efforts to direct parking away from the street. What exactly does that mean? What are your plans to do that? I guess just what are your plans to do that? And that can be for anyone at the school or otherwise that actually is going to have to do this during the game.
Yeah, so well, in our zoning submittal, we did submit a letter from the school that said that they will have a police officer working to direct parking and traffic. Andy, I don't know if you want to take that and kind of elaborate more on that.
Yeah, sure. We'll actually have multiple officers at a home event, which is a standard operating procedure that we would have at any field. There'd be a focus inside, there'd be a focus at the gate, and then a focus on, it's called the perimeter, the parking and so on. So multiple officers managing exactly what we would need. Simultaneously, if we need to appoint a school official to block off or to manage a certain area, side street or something like that, that is something that we're prepared to do.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Mr. Durham, anything else?
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here and for your time and your testimony here today. All right, I'm going to go over to Mr. Mueller. Mr. Mueller, it looks like you may have someone else in the room with you. Are you both going to testify?
Yeah, my concern.
Well, Mr. Mueller, before you get started, if you're both going to testify, could you both get into the camera frame? I need to swear both of you in. Great. All right, if you could raise your right hand, I need you both to answer out loud. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Ready?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so my concern revolves around the sales lane area. My daughter lives there. I also have a house on that short block there behind the high school. And the question really is, I know you're referencing police officers, but there's hardly any traffic, regular traffic on parking on DeSales Lane at this point for residents. So any additional parking for people that are going to the game would just make it impossible for people that live there to park. So my question is, can we be assured that there will be a police officer blocking that street off to people that are going to try to park there for attending a game?
Okay. And so, Mr. Andy, do you want to respond to that now?
I can. I can assure that we will have someone, whether it's a police officer or an attendant employee of the school in some way, and a residential traffic only sign to restrict that to the best of our ability.
Okay, great.
Okay, well, that's really, our main concern is that a resident can get back there and park on a game night if there are, places available. So, yeah, I mean, is it legal for a high school representative to block off a public street? I'm just saying, I'm being the devil's advocate here. I just want to make sure that there's some teeth to this.
Mr. Moore, what I've seen at other schools are think of it as a sawhorse with a sign that's been laminated in some way that says restricted to residents only, and somebody in a parking vest that looks official. I would assume that anyone at any time of the day could just do whatever they're going to do, and we would not have the ability to forcefully stop.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But yes, as a deterrent, there's two things. As a result of COVID, all schools now put out, here's where you park, here's where you enter, basically all the rules of visiting a guest. And so we will be very clear on where you can and where you cannot park with those directions. And at the same time, put up a semi-passive, semi-aggressive blockade where a resident could easily maneuver around, but it's clear to the public that this is not an option.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm satisfied with that. I just want to make sure that it's not just gee, we'd like to put out a little sign along the side of the road saying, please don't park here.
Yeah, it would be more active than that. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Trey, anything you'd like to add to the testimony here today so far?
Sure. While it's sort of on the table, I will provide for the team at Kleinger's and for Purcell contact information with the Department of Transportation and Engineering, so that you can understand the appropriate guidelines for any kind of restrictions on the street. So I can just to assuage Mr. Mueller's concerns, and I believe his wife there, just to make sure that you're doing that properly and meeting any of that. So I'll provide you with that information ahead of time. And then if, for example, if they require that be, an official such as a police officer, an off-duty police officer, then so be it. But at least you'll know what the rules are there for, doing things in the right of way. Is that okay?
That's great.
Yep. So we'll make sure we'll have all that clarified before you get your final certificate of occupancy and so on. And if need be, we can even write that into a condition of the permit approval, or for example, if we can clarify it in the next, couple of weeks prior to the next week or so prior to Mr. Sturkey issuing his formal decision, we could certainly incorporate that as a condition. I believe that's certainly possible to get clarity on that. Okay.
I'm fine with that. Thank you.
One other thing I wanted to point out, David, I think that Andy has already spoken to and Mr. Durham as to the agreement with the East Walnut Hills Assembly, but those are depicted on the elevation drawings that Ms. Hammond showed. It does show what we'll present as a black wrought iron fence on top of what will be a textured stone wall. It'll be where it presents as if it's it's a concrete, but it'll present as a molded molded like as if it's stone, like limestone. And I did want to point out that there was no relief necessary for the fence on top of the wall because it's a retaining wall. If it was a freestanding wall, then the variance would have been significantly higher. But it's a retaining wall, which is a different matter than you know what I mean. Than if it was a stone or brick wall with then conventional wall with then fence on top of it. So those meet the conditions that were requested by the assembly. So I wanted to point that out as well. I think you clarified the numbers of parking. Ms. Hammond did. They needed variances for reduced parking for the existing uses, and then they needed that relief to go down to the 192 from 229. And then obviously if the full stadium, full bleachers are built, they'll need relief for the entire 200 seat capacity. I did note, I wrote a pretty extensive staff report. It's 16 pages in length. David, if you want to peruse that more fully, after hearing from the testimony, you'll find that I've covered most of that in here. It is a significant request as to parking. However, it I think quite reasonably stated that these uses are almost complementary to each other or shared. There's, when there's a wedding going on a Saturday afternoon, it's not the same time as the Friday night lights for the football. And the same thing when the school's at full capacity for an event, then when the schools are at capacity, that won't be when there's a major event taking place. Same thing if the churches, when mass is held at St. Francis de Sales, that would be on a Sunday. So there's just a natural kind of shared capacity or synergy sort of to that, and that's something that I know that I worked a lot with Kleinger's and the school did, and also discussed at length with the zoning administrator regarding that. That was extremely important for us to understand not only the number of events there would be, what the impact of those would be, potential impact, but also that shared component to it of having, I would just call them complementary times, because they don't overlap. So in that sense, that the spaces really will be available on a regular basis. Those parking spaces will be available on a regular basis for different events, which of course are occurring at different times, as just stated. The last thing I would note as to the signage, the only sort of curious thing was the back of the scoreboard, but I do think it's from a branding standpoint and a wayfinding standpoint, that's where all the people are going to be walking into the stadium, it does require relief both locationally and as to the dimensional variance, because it's effectively a ground sign. I will state that there was, I know. I stated in my staff report there was a similar sign. It was a wall sign, albeit, but one of the other GCL, or Greater Catholic League schools, Elder, several years ago built a major athletic building, and they have a logo of their Panther on there that is roughly similar in size to this, and also required relief. And it was just the main focal point where people would be entering there. It similarly faced a school, the Seton School there. So it also needed a locational variance. But while I realize these hearings are held de novo, I did want to explain that there was precedent, and at least one that I can think of, and possibly others at other schools where they have received relief as to signage. There have been numerous other stadiums. I've listed them in here that where the stadiums have required some relief as to signage. In this instance, the reason they didn't need a lot of relief for other signs, David, is because about 80% of the stadium will be located in the commercial district rather than the RMX district to the north. and they're not having any signage in the RMX district. They originally considered that, but removed that from. There would have been signage facing toward the Mullers, home there on DeSales, but they have removed that from their package. So that's why it didn't require relief, such as other stadiums that are located at conditional uses in residential multifamily or single family districts. So I hope that clarifies why the other signage met the spirit and intent of the code, and it's simply because it's in a commercial district and allowed. Do you have any other questions that I could clarify, David?
I do not. Thank you for your testimony today. Okay. Anything in closing or otherwise from the applicant ownership team here before we adjourn?
No, I just want to thank everybody for their time and being here and helping us through this project. I know it's been a long work in progress. We've been working with Trey since I think July of 2021 to be able to get this project to this point. So I want to thank everybody for their time to get us here. Andy, I don't know if you have anything else.
Just on behalf of the 400 or so students and 60 staff members, I thank everybody for their time today and consideration and hard work put in.
Okay, thanks. I think we'll leave it at that then. I am inclined to approve this project, but I'd like to take a little bit closer look at some of these conditions and sort of figure out the best way to craft those and attach them to the decision. So give me a couple of weeks on this. We are experiencing really high volumes of applications. There may be a slight delay, but I'd like to take a little bit more time to look at the conditions a little bit more closely before I write my decision and issue a formal decision on this. So as soon as I do finish that decision and include those conditions, I put it into a PDF and I email it to everybody who's in this hearing today. So you all will have a copy of that really just moments after it's complete. If you'd like a status update on that decision, or if you have any questions at all in the meantime, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'd be happy to answer that or to give you a status update. Are there any questions right now?
David, just one question relative to the timing of that extra consideration. And this is just planning as it relates to end of school year, moving in the summer and so on. Do you have a guesstimate on that?
My estimate would be 2 to 3 weeks before the decision is issued. So where does that put us? The 25th. I would estimate at the latest. The decision is issued, and as soon as you get that email with the decision, you can start working with Trey immediately on getting those approvals. The permits, that is. Does that answer your question, Andy?
Yes. Mr. Sheeran, anything from you?
No, I'm good. Thank you, everyone.
Great.
Okay, and I'll work to get that out to you guys as quickly as possible. All right, thanks everyone again for your time and your testimony here today.